Hey everybody, Jeremy here, and today I got 4 more action figures from the upcoming movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows by Playmates Toys. So in my last video, I did a review on the Krang figure, and I was pretty happy with it for what it is, and I said I would go back and get the Bebop and Rocksteady, and I did. Except I got 2 more while I was there. So in this video, we're going to cover Bebop, Rocksteady, Splinter, and Casey Jones. I don't have any plans on getting any of the Turtles as I feel like I can go to other companies and other avenues to pick those up. So we're really just going to concentrate on these 4, and I have also no intentions on getting that Shredder because he looks absolutely horrible. Not touching that thing at all. And also because the Splinter and Casey Jones, we don't tend to see these figures really introduced in a more premium, more expensive format all that often. And that plus I don't have any Casey Jones or Splinter figures. I thought it would be just a nice little beginning collection for them. All right, so got all these guys from Walmart. They cost about $8.98 a piece, so not very expensive at all. And they also come, at least some of them, also come in larger 11-inch format. So if this size is not your thing, be on the lookout for the larger figures as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to open these guys up, and we are going to see whether or not these are something that you might want to add to your collection. So let's start things off with Rocksteady. And I'm going to try not to spend too much time on each individual figure because I still got 3 more to go. So a common theme that you're going to be seeing throughout this entire line of figures is they've got some pretty decent molded detail, but the paint detail is not always there. And it's not that the paint is sloppy by any means, because the paint seems to be pretty well restricted. However, it's just that there are a lot of molded details on these figures that are unpainted, and I feel that if they were painted, it would take these figures just to another level. So let's just go over some of the things that Rocksteady has going on for him. So you see on his arms here, he does have these 2 brass knuckle rings on, and it says "Your Face" on both of them. And it's very clearly legible, and I think that's really cool. And they also painted those a gold color. I'm really happy that they did that. However, you can also see on Rocksteady's wrists, there's some molded detail for a bracelet or chain of some sort that is not painted. Instead, it's really just the color of his flesh. So that's just one example of some molded detail that they included, but did not paint. Perhaps they did that when they were having prototypes and just showing off the character and saying, wow, that looks pretty good. But when it comes to actual mass production, take away some of the paint detail just so that it won't cost so much to them. Another cool thing about this Rocksteady figure is he has tattoos. If you look over on his left arm, he has 3 tattoos. There's one that has a skull with a crown on it. There's another one that has a cross on it. And there's another one that looks like it has like a little symbol for like a chopper symbol, like if he was part of a biker gang or something like that. I like the fact that they painted his eyes, as you can see with Bebop a little bit later on. They did not go that far with his eyes. Over on the back of Rocksteady, you see that he has this this writing on the back of his vest. I'm not too sure what that means and what the significance of this is. If you know what it is, just let me know in the comments. But it looks like it says something like ONFISK. I'm not too sure what that means. But yeah, that is not painted. That's just molded on, so it doesn't stand out too much. The pants are a pretty cool color. It's a very, very vibrant brown color, and his pants are camouflaged. So that's a really cool detail there. He also has a chain right here on his pants, like he might have a chain wallet in his pocket, but that chain is not painted. So it's sort of like the same thing on the top of his head here. He has on this headgear, and it's just a solid sort of a green color. None of that is actually painted either. But I do like the fact that they painted the chain on his neck, and they also gave some attention to these studs on his jacket, like little dabs of silver paint on the studs of his jacket, just to bring out a little bit more detail. So some things about him just don't have the paint. I really wish that they would have included that, but I'm also at the same time surprised some little details that they did decide to paint. Now, let's look at some articulation for this guy. And the first thing is pretty darn surprising. He can do like the splits like crazy. I mean, this is like a complete split down on the table split. So he has some really, really good articulation in the legs as far as them going out like that. That was pretty surprising to me. Now, as far as bending of the knee, he does have a little tiny knee bend, but it's quite insignificant because it really doesn't do much. But you still can swivel the very bottom of his leg that way. His feet have absolutely no rotation. There's no pivot in his actual feet. All the rotation stops at the knee there. And of course, it's the same thing on the other leg. For the arms, of course, is rotation 360 degrees all the way around like that. His arms can go up about that far, which is a pretty decent length as far as how high his arms can go. He does have a little tiny elbow bend, but it's so small, it's almost insignificant. So you can see like that's how it will go out like that, and that's how much it will bend total. So it's not a very great elbow bend, but it is there, and you can also swivel his fists like that. So, you know, not bad as far as articulation goes. Not bad at all. And I can't really say that I expect him to have like crazy articulation in his knees, since him and Bebop are just kind of, they're really stout, you know. So I would expect some articulation more so on the top than the bottom. He also comes with two different accessories here, and these are two unpainted accessories. So we have a baseball bat with some barbed wire wrapped around it, which is kind of reminds me of The Walking Dead with Negan and yeah, how that ended. And then over here, he has a sledgehammer, and they're both brown. They're both made of very flexible type of rubber, and these just slide into his hand. Either hand is completely fine. So, and they slide in pretty easily. And I kind of do like the fact that they are made of like this rubber type of substance, because it does help them to go into their hands a lot easier. So there you go. And one thing that I forgot to point out, his head also does move, and it's sort of like at an angle. So it's not directly to the left and directly to the right. It just kind of moves. It just kind of moves up, you know, just a little bit. And his head does not move up, and it does not move down. The joints are not necessarily loose. They're not tight either, but they're sort of bordering on almost too loose, but it never quite reaches that degree. So yeah, that's Rocksteady. Oh, and one more thing, he does have peg holes on the bottom of his feet if you have a stand for him. All right, so that's Rocksteady. Now let's take a look at good old Bebop. Bebop here is in a similar boat to Rocksteady in that he has some fairly decent articulation for a character of this price and of this size. He has some pretty good mold on him, but there are some things that don't have paint, and I'm going to show you all of those. I first wanted to start things off with his accessories in hand, and he comes with a crowbar, and he comes with a chain with a lock on it. And much like the Rocksteady accessories, they are completely unpainted. I think it would be really cool if you just did the shoe polish technique, right? So you can take this chain and this crowbar, get some of that black shoe polish, rub it on there, then wipe it off. And I think you can really make this particular, these accessories look much better than what they are. So you can do that with him. So I'm just going to take these away from him for just 1 second. And these still are like the little flexible plastic rubber type of material that they use for him. All right, and let's take a good look at Bebop all the way around. So one thing that stands out most on Bebop, of course, is going to be his pink mohawk and his pink glasses. That is very, very reminiscent of the original cartoon show, and I love the fact that they're doing that for him. So he does have these pink glasses. I can lift them up, but as you can probably see, he does not have painted eyes underneath those glasses. I guess they figured the glasses are going to be covering it up anyway, so why bother? I wish they would have painted his eyes like they did Rocksteady, but at the same time, I can kind of understand why they felt the need to cut the corner there. His skin, his flesh, is not completely smooth. It does have some texture to it, so I like the fact that it has some texture to it. And on the back of him, you see that he also has a similar studded jacket to Rocksteady. However, all of his studs are in the back of his vest as opposed to being on the sides. But unlike Rocksteady, Playmates, sorry, did not take the time to actually paint in the little details on the studs here. So they didn't do the dab of the silver paint right here. But this is another spot that I think would be maybe kind of neat if you did the shoe polish technique. That black shoe polish, and just put it like all like right here and maybe along the front, kind of give it a more gritty and dirty look. It might just work. So I like that about them. They did, however, try the silver dab paint technique on his wrist gauntlet things here. As you can see on this one, they did manage to dab the paint on some of these studs here. They didn't do it on all of them. Like on this side, you can definitely see there's some that they actually missed, but on the other side, you can see that they did apply the paint there. And it's the same thing on this other arm. They applied some paint on some studs and they didn't apply paint on some other studs. On his legs, you can see that he also has some paint here, but they seem to have messed up a bit on this. This side looks kind of, fine. Like they took the paint and whatever process that they used, they managed to hit that silver paint directly on top of the stud on his pants. However, on this other side here, it's like the machining process missed the stud. So while they still applied the silver paint, it's off by just a little bit. So the paint is not directly on the stud, it's right beside the stud. So I thought that was pretty funny, the fact that that happened. But from far away, you can still kind of see that, okay, they did try to apply that extra paint there, and I guess A for effort, maybe? He has one tattoo on his left arm, looks like to be a flame of some sort. And I do like the fact that they did paint the nose ring that he has here. All right, so that's Bebop. Let's go over some articulation. Now, much like Rocksteady, he does have that pretty good and pretty wide leg split. It's not as good as Rocksteady, but it still goes out pretty far. He does not really have much of a knee bend. I mean, that's pretty much all you're going to get. His legs are short and stout, just like Rocksteady, so I can kind of see why they wouldn't give him any kind of a knee bend, but you still do get the swivel that's kind of like right at the top of his boot, and the upper leg does not swivel. So you have one little swivel at the boot at the very bottom, and then you have the splits. Over on his arms here, you have this bend. His elbow bend seems to be a little bit better than Rocksteady's elbow bend. And his arms do still rotate at the shoulder, and you still have the little rotating arm, and they painted the ring that's on his right hand, and I'm glad that they did that. No waist movement, no crunches, none of that stuff, and that's all the articulation that you are going to get with Bebop. So this, along with those accessories, I think that Bebop and Rocksteady are probably the stars of this line. I'm really happy with the detail that they did give to them, and for what they are and for their price, I can't really complain too much about little details that were not painted. Next up, we have Casey Jones, and Casey Jones, of course, is going to be much skinnier than Rocksteady and Bebop, and you can see the accessories that he has on him right now. We have his trademark hockey stick that is made of the same little bendy material as the other accessories, perhaps more so because it's thinner, and I'm not sure if you can tell in the video, but it looks kind of warped when you have him holding it like that. It bends a little bit. And then he also has these two skate accessories that came inside the package. At first, I didn't know what these things were. I had to look it up, honestly, but these just slide right onto his feet, and these act as skates. And he can stand just fine with these on his feet. And they make him a little bit taller, too. So if you want him to stand more in unison with the rest of your characters as far as height goes, then you can just go ahead and do that for good old Casey Jones. I'm going to rob him of his accessories here, and we're going to take just a little closer look at Casey Jones. The mask does not come off, at least it's not supposed to. The band does seem to be molded onto his head, so it definitely doesn't look like this mask is removable at all. I really wouldn't want it to be because it's Casey Jones and he has to have that hockey mask. It's a very thin, very thin figure, and the articulation is not great. As you can see, you can move his arms up about that much. He has an elbow bend that seems to be like 90 degrees, straight up 90 degrees. His hands still do rotate. He cannot do the splits at all. You can't move those legs out. It's not doing that. You can barely move his legs forward. You can barely move his legs back. His legs have a rotation slightly up at the upper leg, and then he has a little bit of a bend there, just a little bit of a bend. So he has very limited articulation. Ironically, Rocksteady and Bebop, that are quite large figures, have much better articulation than Casey Jones, and I think that's pretty interesting. The paint on him is very basic. Blue jeans, black boots, sort of like a grayish jacket with a light gray hoodie underneath, or it's just or those two things are combined. He just has a lighter gray inner layer with a darker outer layer. That could also be the thing. But on the back of the packaging, it shows that he has like a little tear in his jeans with a little bit of flesh showing underneath. And as you can see, it's not like that on this figure at all. So that's another one of those gotchas from our good friends at Playmates Toys. So that's Casey Jones. It's nice to have a Casey Jones figure, but I do wish that he had more flexible articulation. I wish that there was more range to the articulation that he does have, because when Rocksteady and Bebop has more flexibility than Casey Jones, that's a little bit of a problem. And last but not least, we have Splinter. And Splinter, I really like Splinter. You know, I like that this getup that they have him in, this robe that he has. I like the texture and the lines that you can see in it. I love the fact that they painted the little tips of his ears like a red color. I really expected them to really just have his entire body be the exact same color, but just a little red paint on the tips of the ears. That did a lot for me, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that they colored the symbol on the back of his robe there is black. They could have just left that the plain color, but they didn't. And they also gave him a couple of accessories. He has his cane here in his left hand, and in his right hand, he has a katana. You can take the katana out of the sheath. One way that I found to put this in is basically to put the katana in his hand first without the sheath, and then put the sheath on after the fact, and then you can kind of get them like this. So Splinter is wearing these sandals here, and as a result, there's a lot of paint that is in between his toes. It's like once they took him off the molding machine, they didn't remove the excess paint from his toes because they figured, well, this is going to be the shape of the sandals, and we want that to fit completely perfect with the sandals. So they just said, forget it, we're not going to remove that extra paint from in between his toes. And okay, sure, I guess. He does have these wraps on his hand, but they are unpainted. I think they are painted on the back of the box, but they did decide to go ahead and paint the leg wraps that he has. So that's also very nice. A little bit of texture on the side of his face too. A little bit of his rat pores are shining through. So that's also a nice detail. Articulation with this guy, not that great. I mean, of course he can move his arms up, and he can move his arms forward and move his arms back. But as far as his legs go, there's not really a lot to go on. His legs kind of just move in and out to the point where it kind of looks unnatural. So if you can look like right up his robe there, and he doesn't have any bends at the knee or anything like that. So Splinter is going to have very limited articulation, perhaps the most limited articulation out of all the characters that I have. But as far as his little detail goes, I do kind of like the detail. This little part right here, this little emblem that he's wearing. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could take that off, but I wouldn't do that. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And yeah, this is Splinter. He's not too bad. Can't really complain. So there you go. There's your look at the 4 characters that I picked up from the new TMNT movie: Casey Jones, Bebop, Splinter, and Rocksteady. And I gotta tell you, I actually enjoy these more than I thought I would. I wasn't expecting too much going into them, but after just checking them out, I'm like, you know what? It's not that bad, especially for the $10. I wouldn't have the same expectations for every single figure that comes out from Playmates Toys, like that Shredder. There's nothing you can do to make me think that Shredder is anything other than complete garbage. But I'm really happy with these guys for what they are. I know that there are some things that I wish were different, some things that I would like to see improved, but the bottom line here is Playmates Toys sells toys directed at children and not adult collectors like myself. So really wanting them to do anything more than what they are currently doing would of course make them charge us more, and of course that would mean that parents will have to pay more for toys, which they probably would not want to do, which is why they don't do it. I know us adult collectors would love to spend more money on some greater stuff, but we just ain't the audience, and that's something that we have to deal with. But if you can deal with that, then I would say, yeah, if you don't have a Casey Jones or enough Bebops or Rocksteadies or Splinters in your collection, why not pick these guys up? I mean, they're nice, they're cheap, they'll be plentiful, and, the paint on them is not bad. It's just lacking in the small details in a lot of areas. But other than that, I say it's a win. Go for it. I don't mind them at all. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'm Jeremy, and I'll talk to you later.